Welcome to Pastor. I'm your host, Tim Reynolds, and we're glad you joined us today. I want to encourage you to follow us on Facebook, give us some reviews on iTunes or whatever podcast, Podbean, whatever you're using to listen to this program. Give us a review. This is going to help us in our ratings on that network. So today we're going to be discussing being a progressive small church. Can a small church have innovation? Can a small church be progressive? May be the question many people are faced with today. Or maybe is it even possible for an older small church to have these things? Well, today we're going to talk about turning a tired, dying congregation into a fresh, innovative church. And this can be one of the greatest challenges a person or a pastor can tackle, even if the congregation is in full agreement of it. But when the people are resistant or apathetic, well, that's even harder on that pastor. There's no 3-step program to guarantee success, but there are some principles that you and I can get the process started. Principles, not promises. They are simply principles, and each church is different. Each personality of a church is different. I've made my share of mistakes trying to turn the church I pastor from what I might think of an unhealthy church to a healthy church. Even though the need was obvious and the congregation may have even been willing, sometimes I got the cart before the horse. If we listen, the Lord will help us find a handful of foundational principles that can help launch our church forward as we move from an old, tired, and dying to a new, healthy, and innovative church. And I'm going to give you some principles today that I think will help you. And the first one is this: connect the congregation to the church's innovative heritage. In other words, go back and look at some things. No one starts a church because they have a set of hymns they plan on singing forever, or because they want to maintain a building, or because they expect the preacher to do all the work. Churches are started by visionary people that have a vision, they have a purpose, that want God to do something in and through their lives and the community that they're part of. One of the most powerful ways to get an existing congregation excited about the next wave of visionary thinking is to tie the new ideas back to the original church visionaries, some of whom might be their own ancestors. It may have been a mother or father, grandparent. For example, you can have your church celebrate its existence by asking those longtime members, the former pastors, to look for documents from the founding days when that church started. One thing that we're doing right now here where I pastor is I'm trying to find out when this church started. So I've got to do some research. So your church has nuggets hiding in your archives. Dig them out, dust them off, display them proudly. I'm not talking about having a museum in your church, but have a time that you can bring those principles, those things that you found that maybe brought that church to life in the beginning. It could be a news article. It could be revivals that they've had, things that happened when the church first started. Chances are, when the church started where you pastor, something big happened that caused that church to exist. So look for those principles, look for those nuggets that are hid, and begin to tie them back into the vision that maybe that you have today. The second principle is strip away everything but Jesus. Don't start your church's turnaround process by preaching about new ideas. So many times I'd come home from a church growth conference and try to implement the principles they taught me, and it would fall short each and every time. One of the biggest ones I dealt with was small groups or cell groups. You may know them by. And I would come home and I would think, if we're going to grow, we've got to have cell groups. We've got to have small groups. And I would try to implement them, and every time it would fall flat. And I actually got some resistance in that process. Then I had to come to the realization we were already a small group. Our men's ministry was a small group. Our women's ministry was a small group. our children, our youth, all the ministries we had operating were small groups. We just never called them that. So maybe don't put a title of small group on something, but just let it be what it is and grow from that. See, it's not these ideas that were bad. It's not that having small groups is a bad idea, but the church just wasn't ready for them, wasn't ready for that move. This would bring much frustration and would begin to have a negative effect in areas that were doing fine. I remember the very first church I tried to implement small groups. It seemed like then the brakes were put on everything that we were doing. So we must get back to the foundational principles of Jesus Christ. So let's assess the situation. We asked a group of people to get together every week to hear teaching from the Bible, a book whose newest sections are almost 2,000 years old. Then we can't understand what makes them resistant to change. Are pastors the only ones surprised by this? See, we need to tie today's changes back to the amazing life-giving truth that came 2,000 years ago. From the Bible. We need to tie that back in. Besides, if the reason for the change can't be found in the Bible, should we even consider it? Of course not. Jesus was the most revolutionary, innovative, progressive, world-changing person who ever lived. His followers should be the same. You and I should be the same. We should always be progressive. We should always be innovative. So real change in a small church starts where every good thing always starts, with Jesus. Just Jesus, only Jesus, nothing but Jesus, all of Jesus. So let's look at Jesus again, and let's show Jesus to our congregation again, not just in sermons, but through our lives. The change in my church might need to start with me, Jesus changing me, getting me focused. Not so much on programs, but on Him. The problem is that we've added so many layers to Jesus over the centuries, it can be hard to see Him clearly today. And our new ideas, they're just one more coat of paint, maybe even dirt on Jesus' face. So we need to strip away everything that isn't Jesus, including our own new, fresh ideas. Let Jesus and His heart replace both their old ideas and our new ones. It's easy for the congregation to argue with the new idea the pastor found in the latest church growth book, the latest conference that he just came from. It's much harder for them to resist when you discover it together in the Gospels. So, speaking of discovering new ideas, how do we come up with them? I believe the best way to come up with new ideas within your congregation is make it a conversation. Talk to your people. There's an old saying that you need to earn the right to be heard. That used to be true, not anymore. Years of manipulating and advertising have made people very savvy to social cues that are around us. We can tell when someone's listening with a genuine interest, and we can tell when they're just keeping quiet until it's their turn to talk. We have to do more than earn the right to be heard. We have to actually listen to what people are saying. Our monologue, our opening statement, has to be replaced with dialogue with our congregation. Dialogue doesn't earn you the right to make your point. Dialogue is the point. So most people resist change because of fear. As a pastor, one of my jobs is to understand that fear, why they are afraid. Why are they feeling the way that they are? And what can I do to alleviate that fear? This isn't so I can get my idea through so that they'll just agree with me, but so I can help them live a less fearful life so that they can live a life full of joy. It's time to put some pastoring into our pastoring. You might build a big church by pushing your ideas through despite people's fears and concerns, but no one ever built a great church that way, big or small. Actually, no one but Jesus ever can build a genuine church anyhow, but you get what I mean. Finally, we need to realize that While some resistance to change may come from people's fear, some resistance may actually be the voice of experience and wisdom. Don't always feel like people are against you because they don't agree with your idea. You can't know which is which until you know the person better. And you can't know the person without listening to them. So we've got to have conversation. We've got to have dialogue with them. So again, those 3 points that I've brought up today, the first one is connect the congregation to the church's heritage. Then that second one was strip away everything but Jesus. And the third one was create this environment of dialogue. Make it a conversation. Begin to have those conversations with your people. So let your church be a progressive church, an innovative church, a church that's really making a difference. Thank you for joining us today. We've got some things coming up. I've been talking with the pastor about doing an episode on depression and pastoring, and we're looking forward to that. Also going to be having a guest here soon of a millennial that has left a small church, and they've now went to a mega church, actually. And we're going to ask them some questions about maybe what took them to that place. Because bottom line, when somebody leaves your church, you always have that question, could you have done something different? And this individual, I believe, is going to share their heart with us, and hopefully it'll help us in the future how to keep people within our local church, a small church. God bless you. We'll see you next time on Pastor to Pastor. That used to be true, not anymore. There's a manipulative advertising, years of manipulating and advertising have made people very savvy to social cues that are around us. We can tell when someone's listening and genuinely interested. We can tell when someone's listening with a genuine interest, and we can tell when they're just keeping quiet until it's their turn to talk. We have to do more than earn the right to be heard. We have to actually listen to what people are saying. See, our monologue, our opening, our thing that we may feel like will grab their attention has to be replaced with dialogue. Our innovative heritage. In other words, go back and look at some things. No one starts a church because they have a set of hymns they plan on singing forever, or because they want to maintain a building, or because they expect the preacher to do all the work. Churches are started by visionary people that have a vision, they have a purpose, that want God to do something in and through their lives and the community that they're part of. One of the most powerful ways to get an existing congregation excited about the next wave of visionary thinking is to tie the new ideas back to the original church visionaries, some of whom might be their own ancestors. It may have been a mother or father, grandparent. For example, you can have your church celebrate its existence by asking those longtime members, the former pastors, to look for documents from the founding